On today's episode of Successful Scales, I had the great pleasure of interviewing Ram Castillo. Ram is a Filipino-born Australian entrepreneur who's had an incredible career ranging from growing up in the likes of Ogilvy and DDB, from being a creative director, an art director, an advisor. The list really goes on. We talk about a lot of interesting topics, including his own proprietary lightning bolt method on how to get through obstacles and really push forward. I mean, it was such a thrilling episode, and I really think that anyone listening in has a lot to learn from Ram. So enjoy. Hi, and welcome to Successful Scales, the show where I interview now successful professionals about their journey and try and garner insights onto any tips that can be applied to your business at home. Whether it's financial freedom or the exit of your company, wherever your journey may take you, the idea here is to simply learn from those who have done it before. I hope you enjoy and you get some value out of this. Buckle up and enjoy the episode. Ram, thank you so much for jumping on today to another episode of Successful Scales.
Yanni, thank you so much for having me, mate. Stoked to be here.
Yeah, well, thanks for taking the time. I know it's late where you're sitting right now, and so I really appreciate, taking out the end of your weekend. And I've got to say, from my standpoint, it is just so nice to be sitting and chatting to another fellow Aussie. So it's just great.
Well, I'm impressed that you're in Tel Aviv, mate. That's a place I've always wanted to visit. So good on you for representing us there and, spreading your gifts, as we say, in other parts of the world, mate. It's important.
Yeah, and it's funny, like how we actually connected was through Clubhouse. And one of the things that I felt like we really kind of bonded over was the fact that how do we continue to push the innovation centers in Australia forward, and how do we actually impact what is like a fairly remote or one of the most remote ecosystems on the planet, but how do we really help elevate everyone inside of that and sort of that entrepreneurial spirit? And here we are.
Man, I'm excited. It's an amazing platform. For those listening, if you haven't gotten into Clubhouse yet, we are seeing massive behavioral shifts, and we are seeing a few things, right? There's the attention that's going into what was Netflix, podcasts, other media, other apps, taking huge bites of those big players. And apparently it's only, as we're speaking now, at the beginning of February, it's only 2 founders and 7 employees. And it also got valued at 1 billion. So I can only imagine what's going to happen now.
Yeah, absolutely wild just hearing those stats. And while we're talking about some pretty impressive things, we had an opportunity just before we started pushing record here today, and I heard a little bit about your background. Honestly, mate, I'm blown away. I feel very, very humbled to have you sitting here. But for those who don't know you, I'd love you to just give us a little bit of insight about you and all the incredible things that you've achieved to date and will continue to push forward in doing.
Sure. I'll give a brief context on it because I don't want to bore your listeners with my background too much. But for context, I live in Sydney, Australia. I am entering my mid-30s, and I think it's important just because I think that we sometimes can attach too much meaning with where people are on their journey. So I'm entering my mid-30s, but I was actually born in Manila, Philippines. I came to Australia, migrated here with my folks and my siblings when I was 1. So I grew up as an Aussie kid with Filipino background, of course, and the way that I see it, and the reason why I say this is that as a designer, it's important to ask quality questions. And some of the things that I'm asking myself now in hindsight are really helping me help others. And by that, I mean, like, a question I've been asking myself more and more is, what are the thoughts and beliefs that have led you to behave the way you've been behaving? And so with the cultural element, I grew up with stories like my dad being one of 11. His father passed away when he was 3, and they would grow up with only having a tablespoon of peanut butter and some bread to share, right? He hustled his way, managed to get and work for 2 degrees that he, blood, sweat, and tears, the whole thing. When we came to Australia, those 2 degrees, marine transportation and mechanical engineering, were not recognized here. Okay, so already you're met with like this whole story of like not just like third world country, poor lifestyle, but it was like legit. Like that's my world now, because I grew up with that. My mum, one of 5, similar thing. Like she was so thirsty. She was telling me when she was like 4 or 5 years old, she went to the cupboard after school and just found whatever she could drink, and it was soy sauce, and she just sculled soy sauce. And then now she's traumatized with soy sauce. But I love soy sauce.
I probably shouldn't be laughing at that.
No, but that's the thing, right? Like it's like a whole other world. And my grandma, her mum's mum, hustled as well. Like she had the corner store selling. She would buy a carton of milk and divide the milk into bags for the local families who would buy it for like 25 cents or whatever, right? Like, and then she would go out the back to sew and dressmake and alter dresses for the community. So my perspective already as a kid was like, eat every grain of rice, don't fuck around. Like you gotta work hard and, stop complaining, kind of thing. So pros and cons, but that prepared me to be in deep gratitude for the opportunity that I had. And so when I was bullied in school, I was always the shortest. I was never the most intelligent, never the most athletic. But all of this is important because when you see how I have navigated all of that, I don't want you to think that it came without struggle. So I'll now fast forward. I was only great at really art and creativity, and the only commercial career path was graphic design. I took that. My parents couldn't afford me to take me to Billy Blue, which was the top at the time and still is quite up there. It was like 45K, applied for scholarships everywhere. And I got one at a no-name sort of branded college and managed to do design. It's important because I'm going to loop back to that. So I did not go to Billy Blue. Okay. Parents couldn't afford me, did get a scholarship somewhere else, completed design. And then there was an opportunity to work in the mailroom at Ogilvy, 350 people on the first day over 4 levels. And they had Pizza Hut, Dove, Amex, Telstra, Milo, Sprite, Coke, the whole thing, right? But everyone was like, why are you taking a job in the mailroom? And I was like, why not? And again, just like, I was like, I've made it. I was like so happy to just be in a building with other creatives and strategists and account managers. And, I was like soaking it all up. But also what I realized was other currencies, because even though I wasn't getting paid much, I probably would have gotten paid more by working at Macca's or Woolies or something, right? But like I met and I was exposed to people who became the springboard to launch my entire career. Ended up going through the ladder, right through to my last roles were design director at DDB, servicing McDonald's, Audi, Woolies clients. My last role was head of digital design at Mercer Bell and Saatchi & Saatchi, servicing Amex, Qantas, Toyota clients, to name a few, and leading teams and departments and working with other departments. So along that journey, I also realized, and it happens, you question, is this the most meaningful contribution that I can make with my time and my life? Because you can climb up that ladder of success and realize that it might be leaning against the wrong wall. And I actually arrived at a point halfway through, because it's been 16 years now, gosh. Halfway through, around 2012, I was about 7.5, 8 years in. I was like, I should be doing more. Like, I feel so dead inside. Like, I'm just designing for banks and cars and, I just felt really empty. having a conversation with my mate, and he's like, mate, so many people are like tweeting you asking for advice on how to get a job. Why don't you just like start a blog so that you can just write something once and then point them to it? I was like, yeah, okay, I'll give it a shot. Anyway, I called it Giant Thinkers. My mate thought that was the shittest name ever, but I ended up sticking with it.
I don't mind it. I don't mind it at all. You're the creative, mate, so push back.
But yeah, exactly. So I was like, look, the domain's available, whatever, and built a blog within like 2 days, Saturday and Sunday, and started writing. Got only like 2 readers the first week, my mum and my sister. And then 3 months later, it got picked up by How Magazine, Communication Arts, organically. And then AIGA, the American Institute of Design, contacted me and invited me to New York. And I've got friends and family in LA. So I said, yeah, look, I'll swing by New York. Like next time in LA, I visit like twice a year. End up going to Madison Square Avenue in their offices, sitting on these grand red chairs. Here I am with Tim Tams handing out the board and the president of AIGA. I'm like, hey, mate,
Wow.
and thanks for inviting me. And then they were so serious with their notepads, and they said, hey, Ram, we wanted to ask you, how are you engaging with an audience that we're struggling to engage with? And then I said, they go, what's your strategy? And I was like, oh, mate, I don't have a strategy, to be honest. I'm just writing to my younger self. And they were like, great. So do you want to write for us? I'm like, yeah, sure. You know, all good. I love just the joy of it, and not a formally trained writer at all. And anyway, I ended up going back to Sydney and continued the writing. And I was like, what's the next thing outside of a blog? So I'm like, yeah, I'll write a manuscript. I'll write a book, but who knows if I'll ever really launch it. 9 months later, through my practice of 10 minutes a day, which I highly advise for killing procrastination and making meaningful progress, I spent at least 10 minutes a day writing, which sometimes turned into 30, sometimes turned into 2 hours. Sometimes I didn't write anything, but I gave it the 10-minute shot. And 9 months later, I ended up with my first book called How to Get a Job as a Designer. Now, I went to 20 different publishers and sponsors, and they all rejected me, mate. And one of them was even Billy Blue, because I was like, hey, you know, if I go down the route of publishing this myself, would you want to purchase a minimum order for your students? And they were like, oh, we don't really think that there's a market for it. You know, they politely declined, and publishers as well. And I was like, what am I going to do? End up just writing and launching it myself, self-publishing it. And then AIGA found out, and then they were like, mate, you do know we've got 72 cities around America with almost 500,000 members, and we can host you for a speaking tour. And anyway, I'm like, yeah, let's do it. Saved up a bit of coin, worked a few more jobs, and then did a 22 city, 3-month speaking tour across America. So then I launched a speaking career, and then ended up speaking at Creative Live as well, the world's largest online learning platform. And when I did 2 classes there, one called Create a Knockout Design Portfolio, the other called Get the Dream Design Job You Want, both classes, 6 hours long, were 10,000 people tuning in live each. Got back to Australia, and then lo and behold, all the organizations that sort of declined my invitation to buy some of my books or support me somehow, they all called me. Billy Blue booked me for 6 talks, one of which was being the industry speaker for the 2015 commencement speech, the graduation speech with 1,200 people. It's on YouTube. Just type in graduation speech and my name, Think Education, and you'll see it. And that was a pivotal moment. And the reason why I say this is probably one of the proudest moments. Like, a Filipino boy who, you know, had a pretty rough upbringing in school, immigrant, didn't have the money, got invited to one of the top design schools to speak and inspire the kids, and somehow convince the parents that they didn't make a mistake paying for their kids' education.
Yeah.
It's just an amazing experience. So yeah, I've sort of spent the last couple of years giving back in many different ways. Second book was called How to Get a Mentor as a Designer. Launched a podcast called Giant Thinkers as well. I've interviewed, you know, Kelly Slater, Naomi Simpson, Shark Tankers, Stephanie Rice, gold medalists. founder of WordPress, Matt Mullenweg, heads of Nike, Deloitte, Visa. Like, it's amazing. And so, you know, we're in this age where you can make enormous impact. I'm now helping business owners. I sit on the advisory board for multiple businesses. And so that's now my focus at this life stage, helping business owners and decision makers get unstuck. I hate the feeling of, you know, your back is against the wall. So my thing is, how can you feel like you're making an empowered and informed decision? I feel like I've been able to navigate a lot of decision making in my life, personally and professionally, through human-centered design methodologies and creative strategy. So I'm a bit of a hybrid, but that's a bit about me, mate. Sorry to ramble.
Mate, don't apologize for 1 second. I was sitting here, I don't know if you saw me writing down a bunch of notes because I wanted to unpack some of the things. So firstly, for anyone listening who doesn't know about Ogilvy or DDB, you know, me coming from a creative advertising background, it's a big deal. And the clients that Ram's worked with are, you know, household brands. So super impressive. A few things I wanted to unpack in some of the things that I kind of took from your experience and your journey that I think, you know, as people are looking to scale their businesses, I think hold a lot of weight and things that can often be sort of overlooked. So the first one was when you were talking about the fact that you were in the mailroom at Ogilvy, and for you, you know, you'd made it, you were in there. And what that says to me is just the power of relationships and the fact that you put yourself in a space where really enabled you to network and meet the right people who could see your unique talent and your ability and your commitment. I mean, starting in the mailroom in itself just shows the lengths that you'll go to get to where you need to get to. And just to even further that point, you talked about the fact that you went down the road of self-publishing the book, and, you know, all these incredible things happen, but you got, what did you say, 20 knockbacks that people weren't interested in publishing the book. You went on to self-publish, and as a result, you end up speaking at the commencement speech of the school that you wanted to go and study at. I mean, it's pretty impressive, and it's pretty remarkable to show that the persistence, the commitment to getting to where you want to get to, and also you talked about the 10 minutes a day, the repetition and the routine and the commitment that you put into everything that you do. Everything to me feels very calculated and very structured. And I think that as I continue to interview, you know, pretty exceptional people like you, I think these are some of the things that continue to come up, and things that, at least for me, you know, I'm sitting here also learning in the education seat as well. It's just super.
Well, you know, yeah, I mean, it seems calculated, but I would actually say, Yoni, it is more around having the willingness and commitment to explore. That I have to really highlight, because there is no amount of book, YouTube video, podcast, mentor, insert resource here, that will help a person if they are not willing and committed to explore. So I just wanted to make that point.
I think that's a great point. Curiosity is a fundamental building block to anything that you're going to actually see results out of. It's that curiosity mixed with the repetition and the commitment to that self and that personal and professional development that will see you kind of start to ascertain those new heights. And you're right, no mentor, no book, nothing is going to take you there. They're going to unlock keys, and it's how you imply or apply them rather to your business and your personal life and your direction that are going to sort of see you take steps in the right direction. So fascinating background, mate. And really, like, you know, I'm also stepping into my mid-30s right now, so we're of a similar age, and it's just awesome to see. We didn't connect on it at all. It's funny, like all of our conversations that we've had today, nothing's been about what we have done specifically in terms of business, and nothing's been about commercially, like, how can you help me or how can I help you? But man, I got to tell you, my entire business is built on a social mission to empower the Philippines. We pay healthcare, social security, HMO PhilHealth, 13th month pag-ibig. We are looking to raise the standard of living in the Philippines and really empower work from home jobs. Yeah. So, you know,
you kept that from me.
I know. Well, Yeah, well, I mean, we spoke on Clubhouse, right? So I'm speaking to another Aussie accent, right? I couldn't know of your background, and this is the first time we're kind of seeing each other. But yeah,
Meant to
so
be.
yeah, so like every single like I am just blown away at the caliber of talent and the work ethic and the loyalty and the integrity and the culture that exists in the Philippines to the point where we won't hire anyone that's not Filipino. Um, that's really like I am the biggest believer. And so, just sitting hearing your story, I want you to come and speak to my whole company and talk about, some of the incredible things that you've achieved, because this is what we're trying to do is create the leaders of tomorrow inside of our operation, because we just have such brilliant minds.
Hey, count me in on that. Because, I've come from, like I said, the background of seeing what knowledge and circumstance can do to the direction and redirection of the quality of someone's life. That's fundamental. And also there's something to be said about like the leadership component of all of us. You said the word leader, so I've like prompt up here. I believe that everyone can be a leader if we're willing to pay the price. And so that price might be, emotional exchange, mental, exchange, energy, time, money, ego. There's a lot there. But one of my favorite quotes about leadership is, well, I've got a few from the great Simon Sinek, and one is the responsibility of leadership is not to come up with all the ideas. The responsibility of leadership is to create an environment in which great ideas can thrive. That's one. And then also with your love for Filipinos, and you've felt their hospitality and their generosity and their warmth. I hope to bring that as well to the Australian culture here, and hopefully I've done that. Simon Sinek also said that you can easily judge the character of a man or woman by how they treat those who can do nothing for you. So there are a few things, mate. Like it's important, like wherever we influence in business or entrepreneurship, or doesn't matter what community, to be honest, it's important to understand that everyone can be a leader and can influence positive change if they're willing to pay the price.
Love it. Absolutely love it. I think that's such sound advice around leadership. And, I think we're also moving into an age of, when we talk about things marketing, and we'll move on to the topics where we talk a little bit about scaling and some of the things that I think you can bring to the table. But so much of what's happening today, at least in my world, in the people that I'm speaking to, it's not about what I can get out of this relationship, but it's what I can give and how I can actually impact and create positive change. And I find that the leaders and businesses and the individuals who are, heart-centered and focused on having positive impact and change are the ones that not only do I see them as being a lot of the most successful, but I want them to be successful. I hope that these are the people that are going to be the leaders of tomorrow, and the people that whatever they do in life will permeate through everyone that they touch. So yeah, I think that those are really hard-hitting and valuable points. So jumping in, and I'm again stoked to have you on the show, and I'm just loving every minute of our conversation right now, because we're talking a lot about the philosophical and the journey. And before I step into success, around scaling businesses, you touched on the fact that you're the son of a family that migrated to Australia, and that were, really struggling to make ends meet when it comes to what it was early on and coming through. How much of that, and also just so you know as well, my dad's Israeli. I'm, I guess half of an immigrant to Australia too. I mean, I was born there, but my father came with nothing and did everything that he did and professionally in life, and he's done some pretty impressive things. How much of that do you feel drives your position and your purpose, and what kind of fuels you to have positive impact?
It's a substantial amount, I'd say, because every time I feel that, sorry, I'll backtrack here. When people ask me, you know, how have you done this or whatever, it's like it's already a preconceived notion that it's difficult. So because of that framing, there lies the issue. So the perspective that I have is different. I'm not saying it's better or worse than anyone. It's just different. I have had a perspective with those stories, as I mentioned. And so I owe my parents the probably what they didn't think was a gift. Like, of course, like, you know, they probably were like, you know, I wish I could give you a new pair of school shoes when all my friends were having new school shoes every year. I'd have to wait every 2.5 years. I didn't know I was not well off until high school, actually. I didn't know. You don't know, you know, that you are when, and so I feel like I'm now in a position where I have fully acknowledged the sacrifices that not only they made, but go all the way up the lineage there. My grandparents, my ancestors, the Filipinos, you know, who, you know, fought for freedom in their version of that. And so every time that I pursue something that is of a absurd, almost audacious, ambitious goal, I always think about the people that I'm serving. And one of the things that I ask myself is, you know, I get the question a lot as well, like, what's your version of success? And it all comes down to this: how well am I sleeping at night? Because if deep down, my own truth barrel, that I am not feeling like I am contributing to the fullness of the expression of my gifts and what I'm capable of, again, right? It's different when you have this perspective. That's why I encourage you to explore the world, obviously, after we are in a situation where we can do that safely, with vaccines and whatnot. But, you know, it's don't let those moments go to waste. Like, we, you know, I met a girl on Clubhouse who is completely deaf, and she coached everyone to end with saying, and I am now done speaking, because she has the text prompters on top, because Clubhouse is a voice platform. She doesn't know who's speaking and when they're ending. So she, you know, I learned something from that. So, you know, empathy, all of that stuff. Like, you know, I'm only able to have this enormous drive. And one of the things that manifestos of giant thinkers is, giant living requires giant thinking. Like, you've got to think and go to depths of yourself that it's no longer even about you. You know, a simple example is when a mom has to wake up at 3 a.m. to feed her child, she would much rather not be woken up, but she did and does, as we have been raised. You know, we appreciate that and understand that example because it's bigger than her. So, you know, I always feel that, you know, you've got to find, that's why I love volunteering. You know, whenever you feel down or you think that you're in a tough position, go volunteer somewhere. I go to a homeless shelter where every fortnight in Woolloomooloo, where it's called the street buffet, and you just bring food and you feed the homeless. They just line up. You know, sorry, I might be sidetracking here, but that there's more than us. And I think we've got to tap into that more.
Love it. Yeah, no, you're not sidetracking at all. I mean, that's the whole root of it. You know, when we talk about the whole audience and what I'm trying to achieve here with successful scales, it's talking to real people about real things that are driving people forward. And so all of these nuggets, understanding kind of the deeper you and what is your motivating factor, you know, that really is at its core what I've set out to achieve here. So your sidetracks are really on track. I'd love to dive into a little bit about your career a bit more, and more so specifically, you know, you've had a really impressive career to date, and I'm not, you know, I have no idea how far you're going to push it, but I'm sure that it's to the moon and back. Now, you know, growing up through Ogilvy and DDB, and then dealing with kind of smaller businesses and navigating, you know, I mean, I was there too, navigating the well, I don't want to say treacherous waters, but some of the more challenging encounters with dealing with some of the bigger corporations on the planet, and kind of getting through management. Like, any tips or insights around people who are, you know, at various stages in their career when it comes to going down the route of, say, working for a DDB or an Ogilvy, or, you know, you're now sitting on advisory boards and you're doing things, you know, your side hustle turned into your main focus, and then it led you to being, you know, a professional, global, world-renowned speaker, to, you know, an accomplished author. I mean, you know, I've just rambled on a million different directions, just kind of highlights how impressive some of the things you've done are. But any tips or advice you'd give to the younger you as you're going through this journey?
Yeah, a few things. One is to ensure that you have a decision-making compass that is very clear. So I'll give you a method that I've come up with because I wanted to package exactly that. How can someone make decisions quickly in a way that they can access options, right? So it's called the lightning bolt method. And the lightning bolt method is something that I've been mulling over for a few years, that I only sort of frameworked and coined last year. And it basically involves this process of three, sort of imagine Venn diagram. And if you go to ramcastillo.com, it's there as well. But you know, when we make a decision, so so you're navigating, because obviously it's a broad question, you're navigating a career, or you might be navigating a challenge of some type, big or small, right? Day to day or life decision. We have an objective there, but the first bucket that I'll say is you need to interrogate the objective. And that's the first part of the lightning bolt method. And by interrogating your objective, it's simply, what is the minimum viable intention? What is the minimum viable version of the thing that you want? So I guess let's put an example in place. Okay. Let's say I want, you know, if you want to be in management or hold a senior position, that's the defining of the objective, which is important, but I would interrogate it more. I would say, what is the minimum senior position title? When do I, like, what department, what agency? This really skews back to another very, very common tool, which is the SMART goals, which is S for specific, as we know, M for measurable, A for attainable, R for relatable, related to what you do, and T for time bound. Okay, so grab that tool, grab that framework, and interrogate the shit out of what you really want. Okay, and you can do this for different things, but let's just go in the lineage of, like, okay, this pathway of, okay, career path. So when you've interrogated your objective down to the specific of even where you want to work, who you want to work with, and also give yourself a timeline to it, now everything becomes clearer. Why? Because you know what to say yes to, and you know what to say no to. Okay. The second bucket is curate your criteria. And this is why I was saying it's important to have a compass. Curate your criteria is this. What is your non-negotiables? That is the simplest, most penetrative way to go, all right, what am I willing to exchange, pay, or trade as a non-negotiable for this? Because are you willing to give up your values? Are you willing to cheat, lie, kill? Right?
Probably not. Hopefully not.
Right? But obviously an extreme example, but you get my point. So you got to curate your criteria, because if you already know that deep down inside you want to work with other like-minded people, then curate the exact qualities and values that matter to you. Don't work for a sales force who a friend of mine worked there, and it's like a 3 strikes and you're out if you don't meet your quota for your target for the month, and you get fired, right?
That's inside of Salesforce.
Yeah.
Shit.
Right. So don't work for them if you are the type of person that values everything opposite to that culture. But again, neither here or there. Like, you might thrive in abundance in that, and it's perfect. Just like how Netflix have defined their culture for their employees as not family, but it's more sport based. And there's a PDF, there's a slide deck about Netflix culture. It's very fascinating. You can research that. But again, like, what is your compass? What is your culture? What is your criteria? Be very clear on that. So that is, what is your non-negotiables? The third and last bucket in the lightning bolt method is dismantle obstacles. So in short, that means root cause analysis. What is the thing that is actually an obstacle? Because you might find that it's an artificial structure called fear, and it's an internal challenge, and that you are actually not addressing the real fear because you're not having a conversation about the thing that you fear. Fair enough, it might be a resource thing, but then again, don't say, oh, we don't have any capital. Bullshit. You actually need to find out what is the minimum amount that you need and break it down and do the responsible thing. I know this might sound like a bit harsh and direct, but it's true. You've got to go down and interrogate, to the dismantling of the obstacles, which is the third thing. You've got to pull apart the challenge and find the source of what is the barrier that's in your way. You know, a powerful question that we use in service design is, how might we ... Everything that comes after that is empowering. How might we come up with this idea? How might we bring it to life? How might we get the right partnerships in order to expand into a new market? Like, insert whatever thing here. Because there's options overload, there's prioritization challenges, and there's analysis paralysis. And this, for me, and you can see the visual diagram on ramcastillo.com. You can see it, and it's free. You can use it.
I'm definitely going to post a link to it on the release here.
Yeah, and it's a framework that I created because I wanted to understand it. I wanted to use something that I wanted to just grab, and as the name suggests, just to rapid decision making, get unstuck lightning fast.
I love it. I've just got to say, I love it because, as I'm trying to sit here and think, how does this apply to successful scales and educating people on scaling your business? Your lightning bolt method actually touches on the core of almost every conversation, constructive conversation that I've had in recent weeks. And you talk about, you kind of put it, you really eloquently put it in this, in this Venn diagram, if you will, of the different areas and how they overlap, is that you're building the plan and you're really defining whether it's a career path or a business objective, or what it is, you're defining, what do I want to achieve? And then you go further down into it and you understand, does this align with me as an individual, as a person? Can I achieve this while staying true to myself? And you also talk about, how do you actually overcome these obstacles? And so I think, I hear a lot of people today, we're having a bit of a laugh about it before we got on, about like, make 6 figures and 7 figures and 10 million figures and all this stuff on Clubhouse rooms. But I hear a lot of advice from people saying, just start, just go and start, just go and get into it. And that's how you do it. And I think one of the things that prevents people from actually starting and taking that advice, and it's always going to fall down at that same page, is the fear that you outlined. And so if you can build that construct, and so I'm kind of unpacking the methodology behind your methodology and how I can kind of understand how it applies. But I think that that's the thing that holds most people back from taking that next step, is something feels too scary, too challenging, too hard, and they put it in the, procrastination box or whatever that looks like, and they never get through it. But to very clearly articulate each of the different aspects that help you actually achieve liftoff, that next stage. I love what you're putting down here, and I'm excited to share your methodology and the Venn diagram and and everything that you're putting together, because it makes such clear sense to me.
Yeah, I mean, look, when we're talking about scale, okay, when we're talking about specifically scaling a business as well, what I've just sort of shared is a very top view ecosystem, big bucket thing. But when you can use it in a few different ways. So let's say we're going to use it to scale. All right. If the objective is to scale, so let's use it again. If the objective is to scale, then you have to interrogate the objective. That's number one. So how much do you want to scale by? Why do you want to scale? That's another thing. By how much do you want to scale? Do you want to scale in people or profit or both? There's a whole area there of you needing to interrogate the real scale version of this, which is, I always say, how do you know when you've succeeded? In fact, I always ask people, how do you know when you've had a good day? And sometimes people are like, fuck, I've never actually thought about it.
Yeah, I'm sure people.
Right?
Yep.
Okay. So now the question is, how do you know that you've succeeded in this scaling that you so desperately want? And so this is where it becomes very, very practical and pragmatic, because I'm a real practical person. So I would even break it down and go, interrogate your objectives into scale, into chunks. So I would go, what does the 3-month scale look like version of what we mean? What does 12 months look like? And what does 3 years? And this all goes back to business life cycles, right? So we know that there's a few different areas, such as, establishing phase, developing and then launching. Then you've got growth phase, then you've got maturity phase, and then you've got the decline phase. And the interesting thing is, if you do not even identify where you are in these phases, then it's not going to help your decision-making process or your version of scale. Because if you want to scale into something that is actually in the maturity phase, but you haven't even, grown and growth period, if you take McKinsey's method, I believe it's called, it's the 3 horizons of growth, where horizon 1 is like, year 1 to 3, let's say, where it's just about maintaining core business, literally just having a business that is revenue generating or break even. Horizon 2 is more of the, 3 to 5 to 6 year mark, which is exploring and discovering expansion opportunities. Horizon 3 is more of the sort of long-term, year 10 mark, where you are actually if you can make investments now to place bets on what might be a payoff in the future. So, there's that tool. There's also, when you scale, and again, we're still in the first bucket here, right? You can use something like the ANSOF matrix, ANSOFF, ANSOF, and it's by a gentleman named Igor Ansoff, and it was first published in the Harvard Business Review in 1957. And there's an article titled Strategies for Diversification. So when we talk about scale, again, are you scaling based on market penetration, new product development, new market development? Are you diversifying rather in a new product in a new market? And all of this comes with great risk. So, right, now I've just opened up a whole other can of worms, which is there's a lot here.
I wish we had 3 hours to do this. I'm gonna have to have you back on for sure.
Mate, but this is exactly what I advise businesses. And so again, we're getting very, very critical here in terms of like real considerations, not not the mindset stuff anymore. We did that at the beginning. So now I'm actually talking about frameworks. And so when we talk about scale, again, if you go back to Lightning Method, you can interrogate the objective of what scale means. Okay. Scale in what? And you've got to be clear on that. Volume, reach, awareness, like what? What the heck do you even mean by scale? Okay, important. And then, of course, there's the curate your criteria, which is what are your non-negotiables? So now, what are you willing to risk? What are you willing to invest in? What are you willing to part with? Some equity to scale, right? There's a whole other thing there. And then it's the third, which is the dismantle obstacles. So, okay, what is in my way? And in every obstacle that you list, pair it with a solution and really be intentional about that solution. Because if it's about picking up the phone, emailing someone, or needing to know a specific partner, this is how you're able to make quick decisions to scale.
Love it. Love it. And I feel like it's a great segue to finish off on a few key points, just to keep it in line here. Firstly, are you familiar with a book called Human Sigma?
No.
So
sounds dope.
You are going to absolutely love it, as I have. So it's all about, obviously you'd be familiar with Lean Six Sigma and what it did to the evolution of industry and kind of the manufacturing floor versus the human component. So it's all about human-centered experiences that overlay that methodology of Lean Six Sigma, where they've put them together. And I guess like the point of the book is that those people who are advocates of your brand are going to have an exponentially disproportionate impact on the growth of your business. So focusing on the customer experience is absolutely paramount to seeing real growth. And they kind of go through this study and they talk about the fact that people who are just satisfied with the services or the product or whatever it is, they're equally as valuable as someone who doesn't like it and simply are lazy and won't go to find an alternative. So having impact and really focusing on the customer experience, which is everything that you live and breathe, has just massive ripple effects. I figured you'd probably like that one.
Thank you, mate.
Yeah, but and we'll talk after this a bit more about some of the books, because I feel like you've got some absolute gems for me, and I hope I've got a few good ones too. But before I do let you go, would love to. You seem to be full of some pretty great quotes, so I'm not going to put you on the spot here and expect a quote. but if you have sort of one guiding principle or one quote or one anything that you'd want to leave people listening today with in terms of a word of advice, what would that be?
Oh, just one.
I know it's an oxymoron, isn't it?
Yeah. Look, one for me that actually is top of mind recently, outside of what I said earlier, which is to lead with generosity and follow with care. The thing that has come about is care, but don't carry. And whenever you are pursuing a business or building relationships and rapport, or leading a team, it's important to know the difference. That you might think that you are on a pathway that is almost out of reach. I encourage you to dream big, to give yourself permission, because the right people are going to come at the right time, as long as you're true to that vision. Because we need more leaders and we need more action takers. Like, the world's not in a shortage of dreamers. We're in a shortage of dream makers. Like, fucking get out there, get yourself in the arena. Like, Google the Theodore Roosevelt quote of the man in the arena. Like, get dirty, and care, but don't carry everyone's burden. Don't carry all the criticism. It's going to come. It's going to be hard, but you can care and let go of, and just be washed over by all the noise and just keep going.
Beautiful. So before I do actually let you go, if anyone listening in today would love to get in touch with you about, any of the businesses, project, things that you're impacting the world with, what's the best way for them to reach you?
My Instagram, that's where I live. The Giant Thinker. So that's my handle, The Giant Thinker. Everywhere really, even on Clubhouse. But yeah, Ram Castillo is my name. You can Google me and hit me up on LinkedIn. Very active there as well. So I'd love to hear from you if you want to extend the conversation or just say hello.
Fantastic. Well, Ram, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for taking the time out. It's also quite late now on your Sunday night, so I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me, mate. Appreciate you.